Hi everyone, welcome again to another Teacher Joseph live question and answer session, trying to answer any questions you have about the English language, English culture, or about life in general. This is my time to be an agony uncle. An agony uncle is the person usually in the newspaper, and you can write to them and say, for example, "Dear John, I have a problem with my wife because she won't cook for me. What can I do?" That's an agony aunt or an agony uncle. So any questions you have relating to English, life, English language, send them over and I'll do my best to answer. While we're doing that, we're also going to have a look at the vocabulary for this week's weekly lesson. Now, I've been doing some YouTube shorts, but to be quite frank with you, I'm getting quite tired of entertaining people who are only interested in a quick song, game, or cat. And as much as I love doing shorts, and it does push up my YouTube figures, ethically, I don't really feel it's the right thing to do in order to teach people English. Having said that, I try my best to reach all audiences. Anyway, while I'm waiting for some of you to join me, let me just take a moment to wish any Asian people who are here today, who are celebrating the lunar calendar festival of Chinese New Year or Spring Festival. I really wish you a very happy time, and I hope you get lots of red letters. The Lunar Festival hasn't quite started yet. According to my moon calendar, it has another 2 or 3, well, I'm not sure exactly. I wouldn't say 2 or 3 days, at least another 9 hours. It's at 2%. So how quickly that changes, I don't know. But if you are celebrating the Chinese New Year, I really hope that you get lots and lots of gifts. Right, well, let's begin just by looking again at the weekly lesson, which is all about Robert Burns. He's the Scottish national poet, so many people are following him. And it says here, Burns Night is celebrated every year on the 25th of January. Okay, so we're going to just have a little look again at my weekly lesson. We'll go through some words. And if you have any questions relating to English language, English life, English living, just put them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer while we are doing that. Right, so Burns Night is celebrated every year on 25th of January in honour of Scotland's national poet, Robert Burns, the Ayrshire poet and lyricist. That's an interesting word. I'm going to write that in the chat, lyricist, so you can see it. And a lyricist is someone who writes lyrics for songs. I'm not sure we can really call Robert Burns a lyricist. He is certainly, or he was certainly a poet, but as far as I'm aware, he didn't write any songs. Right, let's just continue. He's still regarded as the most prominent poet to have written in the Scottish dialect. Prominent means the most famous, the one who's most in front. If something is prominent, it's a thing in front of you. So if you have a stack of cans of food in the supermarket, the most prominent one is usually the one you lift because you want to buy it. His most well-known poems include To a Mouse and Addressed to a Haggis, Tam O'Shanter, A Red Red Rose, and The Selkirk Grace. By the way, speaking of mice, my little cat is going crazy because there's a mouse somewhere here. I haven't seen it, but I can hear it behind the walls. I'm pretty sure it's not in my apartment, but it's behind the walls of my apartment. And I'm, I don't think I'll have any problems with it because my little cat is waiting. He's standing in particular parts of the room waiting for that thing to appear, at which point he'll be waiting for it, which is very funny, watching a cat do that. Just to remind you, I'll be here for a little while longer simply to take your questions or any concerns you have about learning. I also want to touch upon motivation. Motivation is different for all of us, and I know some of you don't understand why I talk about this, because as far as you're concerned, learning English is an action. It doesn't really require too much thought, but I want to put a new idea into your head about that. And the new, the new idea I want to give you is simply that each of us have our own belief systems, and it doesn't really matter what that belief system is. You know, it could be a belief in some kind of higher being. It could be a belief in anything, but whatever that belief is ultimately going to affect your ability to learn, because what you believe about the world and about yourself is going to affect directly your learning ability. So if you believe there's a God waiting to punish you and throw you into hell for not learning, it might be motivating for you. Likewise, if you believe once a year and only once a year something drops from the sky, and that's your idea of some kind of higher being, then perhaps only once a year will he allow you to learn. You may not have thought of this, but if you want to really be successful at learning, you first have to understand and define what pushes you forward, your background in all of this. It sounds not important because you might think, well, English is just English, I just learn it. But actually, how high you go is going to always be determined by what's running in the background. So something for you to consider there. It doesn't mean you have to run away and spend 3 months in a monastery, but it does mean you have to understand the power that's around you, what that is and how it's working. And for most people, once you do that, it frees you up to believe that you can do better than you currently can. If you are having any problems learning, the problem is never usually about learning. Something I've learned is that when people come to me and they say, oh, Teacher Joseph, you know, I just can't remember words. I just can't remember anything. I have a problem. The problem usually is nothing to do with learning. It's usually something else completely, but it manifests itself in this particular way. So it takes a lot of introspection and a lot of digging just to discover really what the difficulty is, because if you have a problem learning, it's never going to be solved by buying the next book, changing the room you study in, trying to dig deeper into the words. For me, that kind of stuff was just useless. It didn't do anything for me. What you need is a whole new fresh perspective, and that again is where this idea of the belief system comes in. Because once you change your ideas about learning, you're free to move on. Now, we all have difficulties, you know. Sometimes we are tired, sometimes we just are aware that we're not doing too well on a particular day. And as we get older, you know, you can get haunted and pulled down by memories of the past, things which aren't right. If you're not going out much, you get haunted by your own feelings. In English, we say to make a mountain out of a molehill. That's an idiom which means to make something big out of an issue which, well, frankly, isn't really there. And so you need a new light to shine in, something new which comes with a new idea in the way in which you learn. I love exploring these kind of things because so many of you are just, oh, if only I could buy the next book. If only I could live in a native country, my problems would be over. I can assure you they wouldn't be. You want to try living here? You'll need a lot of money. You won't understand anything. And finding people to talk to, even for native speakers, is almost impossible. So you would do much better where you are, I would say. Right, let's continue with our words from this week's weekly lesson. It says here that Robert Burns gained fame for his numerous love affairs. To gain fame means to become famous. Fame, of course, you recognize it, it's from the word famous. For his numerous love affairs and radical political leanings, expressing sympathy for the French and American revolutions. I'm not a political person, so I don't really know what that means, but certainly I can tell you that if you express sympathy for something, it means you support it. Yeah, so it also means to feel sad about something, but to express sympathy for it usually means you're giving it support. So if you express sympathy on election day towards a particular party, you're supporting them. Right. I already did a YouTube clip about haggis, and there's another audio clip I think coming out today in about half an hour as well, which is again all about Robert Burns and his contribution. But we're just going through some words. So let's see. Yeah, so his poems are recited. Now, that's an interesting word, to recite. And we use that word quite a lot in English. Let me just take a drink of my tea here. It's still early. It's dark outside. It's cold. You know, all the usual English winter things. Yeah, so to recite, well, it's kind of a false friend because I think in Spanish, at least, the verb recitar is used as a word in religion for prayer, if I'm correct. You can tell me if I'm wrong. But in English, it's really just about reading aloud, saying something with your voice uh, from a text. It's not something that's from your heart, it's something from a paper or something from your mind. Um, it's something that you know word for word because you've learned it. That's to recite. And on the 25th of January every year, uh, people who are associated with Burns poetry, that means basically Scottish people around the world, they will get together, they will drink a lot, they will eat haggis, and they will read the poetry of Robert Burns. Now, I have to say that I don't, because I don't drink alcohol. Uh, I also don't eat much meat. Sometimes I do, but haggis isn't really my thing. It's fattening. It's disgusting. I mean, you can get vegetarian versions of it, but yeah, it's interesting. So then they recite poetry, and it's a very solemn evening. It's very solemn means very serious. It's not an evening where you sing and dance. It's very serious. They bring the haggis in on a big silver tray. They read poetry to it, and then they stab it. Um, this ceremony has its links in Freemasonry and Protestantism. It's quite a hard, solemn thing. I don't particularly like these exclusive events. It used to be you had to get an invite to go to one of these. It wasn't so easy, but these days you just buy a ticket. Um, let's see what else it says here. Yeah, they got the date wrong initially. Initially, it just means in the beginning, when they were first trying to organize this. Um, What else does it say? Yeah, he was known as the ploughman's poet. The plough is basically the thing which digs up the ground. So if you have a farm and you have a tractor, it's usually pulling a plough behind it. It's like a machine that can turn the ground over, ready for planting. And we all know, of course, that Robert Burns was indeed a bit of a ladies' man. He enjoyed the company of the ladies, and was something that he liked, you know. Um, eh, Not only that, he had a very good life, you know. He enjoyed his drink. He didn't like too much the church, so he wrote about it, was always criticizing it. It's interesting when we talk about poetry. I'm currently doing a course, um, and part of that course is about Scottish poetry. And I have to say, even though I write poetry, my poetry is always about meaning. It's never just about social things. It's about seeing the bigger picture. And they're putting forward this idea that there should be some kind of standard. But I always think if you start laying down the law, it takes away creative power. That's my view of it anyway. I'm not sure what you think about that. Even if you like poetry, in some cultures, poems are considered to be great things, huge things. But then in other ways, and in different cultures, poetry is not celebrated. Poetry isn't something that's celebrated here because the arts generally are kind of ignored. The only reason why Burns remained popular, I think, is because he's seen as something particularly Scottish, which represents some kind of different thought. But I don't think anybody really appreciates him. And in fact, they made a decision was it last year? A few months ago at least, anyway, that he should be removed from the teaching system so that young people will no longer get to hear about him, which is strange because he is our national poet. So why would you not want that to be? You know, it seems very strange, but that's the way it is, and that maybe shows just how little regard people here have for poetry. Um, I'm not a particular fan of American culture, but one thing they do very well is the arts. They love theatre, artistic expression, poetry, but it's something that's dying here as we become more streamlined. And I get the feeling that if they could just, make us all into robots, they probably would. Right, let's see what other words we have here about Robert Burns. Uh, just to remind you, this is a live event, and I'm here talking about any questions you might have regarding learning English, anything regarding English life and culture. I had a student the other day, and she I don't quite know if she understood what she wanted, but she started telling me how she doesn't understand um, why her English is not getting better. And the answer for me is quite simple. She simply doesn't believe that she can. I explored that a little bit with her. She's got no self-confidence. She doesn't believe she can pass the exam. And so she told me, though, she's got a faithful person, and she thinks she's being punished by her higher power, which in this case is God. And with a belief like that, it's very hard to change someone's mind, especially if there isn't any room there for her higher power to be a friendly person. So of course she was stuck. And she's talking about changing the rooms she studies in. She's talking about going to the library to study. And I was trying to explain that she can do all of those things, but unless she actually looks at this from a completely different angle, nothing is going to change. That, I think, is where there's always problems. Anyway, let's see what else do we have here. Yeah, one of Burns's women died tragically, and of because tragic means sad. He moved to Dumfries where he leased a farm. That just means rented a farm. Yes, again, we have the word fame because he became quite famous when he wrote his first book of poetry. One of the reasons why many people don't like Burns' poetry is because it has a lot of personal opinion in it, all about what he thinks. And for many people, that's very empowering because it gives a voice. But for some of us, I just think it's a waste. I mean, for me, poetry is something deeper, something mystical, some celebration of the arts. I just don't see how it's related at all to just someone's opinion. Surely there has to be a little bit of the mystic, the magic in there that inspires us and gives us that click, that thing that helps us to capture the sacred or the divine. Very interesting, isn't it? So that's more or less the weekly lesson of this week. There's no other difficult words in there. There's folk music. That's another thing. Folk music. Folk music is a genre of music which is more grassroots. It's more about the actual, how can I say, folk music is music produced by ordinary folk like us, ordinary people. Music which is produced from a certain culture for a certain culture. It doesn't have that global streamline about it. Very interesting. So yeah, let me just write that for you. Folk music. Maybe you like folk music. If you're Dutch, you might like the Slager. The same in Germany. They have that traditional music, which is a little bit strange for anyone who doesn't know it, where they sing and dance and drink at the same time. It's a very, very much an acquired taste, I think. But folk music in the UK is all about music which is more traditional, more grass roots. If you have any questions about English language, English culture, English life, please do send them over. Don't be shy. And we've just been going through some words from the weekly lesson, which this week is all about Robert Burns. For those of you who are celebrating Chinese New Year, I really hope that it's a special one for you. It's happening very soon, and according to my moon calendar, it's looking like later today or early tomorrow, because my moon calendar says it here, at least in the UK, there's 2% left, I think, before the moon disappears, and then the new moon starts to appear. So very interesting, very interesting. So that's coming up in the next few days. So perhaps you have a nice Chinese restaurant near you, or you want to watch the celebrations live from China, I think that would be really, really nice. Actually, I saw something on social media the other day where in China they had this dragon going around the sky, and according to the reports, it was actually made by drones. It was very beautiful and very impressive, but I don't know if it was actually true. It looked like it was nice, but I don't know if it was true or not. So that was very, very interesting. For those of you who are interested in things like astrology, and it's very interesting, my English lessons, because I talk to people from all around the world. I talk to many of you from different places, and you all have your own things which help you along your journey of life. I was talking to a guy the other day who's very into astrology, and he was telling me that, he has to wait for a certain moment just to learn grammar. When Pluto aligns with something, it pushes him forward. Pluto is a planet name. But I was thinking to myself, wow, you get so wrapped up in in these things, you know. I wonder if they do actually bring you any peace or joy. And for some people, you know, that really is their power for learning. You know, it's wrapped up in a separate idea, which is involving the bigger picture. And the bigger picture, as far as I'm concerned, is not trying to define when to learn, but just allowing that thing, whatever we call it, that thing inside of us, that thirst for life, just to burn and to take us higher. I think that's a wonderful way of living. And daily, of course, if you tune into it, learning can become very easy. Anything that's done with joy is relatively easy. So the more you can get in touch with your joy level, and just check your joy level to see how it is, the easier it becomes. Yeah. And one thing is for sure is that Robert Burns brings a lot of joy to different people because of the poems that he wrote. So last Saturday was very interesting to see that happening. Now remember, I'm here to take your questions about English language and English literature. So if you have any questions at all about English, learning English, even English life, please do send them over and I'll do my best to help you. Right, we've been going for almost half an hour now, and there's no sign of anyone coming in and staying. There's a few people have dropped in and then quickly left, maybe because they weren't very happy with what I was doing. But as I was saying earlier, I just don't think people have the attention span anymore. They want to flick through YouTube, they want to see my cat, they want to take a quick word. But yeah, no one seems to really have the patience anymore for lessons like this, which is why I'm more comfortable talking to older people, because I can see what they're trying to get at. I can see, you know, they're trying to hang on to principled and traditional ways of learning. Younger people, it's just as you go, as you ride. And for me, it works okay, but doing things like YouTube Shorts, you know, it doesn't really interest me. I have to do it, but just not my thing. I'd rather be here live or on a clip talking with you. Delicious. Yeah, so anyway, as I was saying, if you are someone who pays attention to things like astrology, I'm noticing, this is something that made our news in the last few days, that there's something big happening in the sky. Now, I know nothing about astrology, I'm afraid. I'm very cynical about it, but there is something out there which is happening in the next few days around the time of the new moon. And if you do put faith in that, it might be a good time for you to reconsider things like communication, also what your goals are. But we can do that anytime. We don't need a new moon or an astrology to tell us that. But I just thought I'd mention it because it is a news story which is going on just at the moment. Okay, let's go then and just have a look at other news stories making headline news in the UK today. So let me just have a look. Here we are. I'll just read some of the headlines for you here. The Home Secretary, that's our internal minister who looks after the UK, she rejects calls to widen the definition of extremism. So basically, some people who break the law are considered to be extremists because of an extreme religious code, an extreme idea. And the way that's defined in law is very specific. And this lady has been asked to widen the definition of that, but she's saying no. I think they wanted to include environmentalists, the people who are fighting for the environment. Yes, we've had the storm. Now, you may have heard me mention in the last few days, there's been a terrible storm across the UK. There was one in particular across Scotland and Northern Ireland. But yesterday and today, there's another one, which is Storm Herminia, which came up, I believe, from Spain. So that's currently in the news as well. It says here, Storm Herminia has brought wind and heavy rain to much of Wales and southern England, with a major incident being declared in Somerset. More than 100 people have been evacuated in the southwestern county following flooding in the early hours of Monday, as well as power cuts across the region. Heavy showers and thunderstorms were expected to continue across the UK into Tuesday, with yellow weather warnings in place until then. Yeah, I must admit, the one last week that was here, Storm Yui, something like that, that was particularly nasty. I was chasing my trash can around the garden and down the streets. It did look like something from a Benny Hill TV show. So that's a headline from today. There's all kinds of things in here. None of them are particularly nice. But yeah, there's a lot of different really negative stories, and I mean really horribly negative stories. So we're just going to overlook those and see if we can find anything positive. Oh, here's an interesting one. Water bills are set to rise in April. Now, yeah, I think I need to just give you a background on this. So basically, the way it works is that if you live in England, you pay water, you have a bill. So you have your local taxes, and you also have a separate bill for water. But in the northern part of the UK, water is included in your other bills. So you don't have a separate bill for water, but it looks like for some people that's about to change. Now, I don't know exactly what that looks like, so we're going to read this story here. It says Scottish water bills set to rise 9.9% in April. Water bills in Scotland will increase by almost 10% from April. Scottish Water, that's the company that looks after it, said the 9.9% rise was necessary to invest in infrastructure to cope with periods of drought and intense rainfall brought on by climate change. It means homes in the lowest local tax, Band A, will be charged more than £400 for their supply and wastewater collection for the first time. I don't know what that means. It says here water bills are collected along with local taxes, and are tied to those taxes to determine their value. So it's not saying that they'll be charged separately, but it is saying the bill is going up. So the bills will be going up for the local taxes, if that's how it's paid. Yeah, very difficult that. I don't know who really looks after these things, but yeah, it looks like the bills will be going up. Well, bills are going up anyway for all of us and for everyone. So it's very interesting, isn't it? It says here the country, and this is saying Scotland particularly, could face a deficit of up to 240 million litres every day. This is of water. You wouldn't think there would be a water shortage here, but indeed there well could be. Right, well, if you have any questions about the English language or about the English culture, please do send them over in our chats, and I'll do my best to try and help. I'll be here for around another 20 minutes, and I'll be very happy to try to answer any grammatical questions you have or questions about living here in the UK. This is the morning time, and in the morning time, we all like to, get up and get ourselves going, hopefully after a good night's rest. I have to say, I didn't really rest well last night. it's just like that sometimes. Too much in my mind. Maybe my tablet screen was still on. I don't know, but I'm just aware that I wasn't completely rested. Something else we do in the morning is we try to get our thoughts together to face a new day. There's many people I talk to who've had their confidence really ripped away from them. And when you are perhaps around someone at work who is overly confident, has a loud voice, someone who's not listening to you, someone who's not on your wavelength, someone that you can't really get along with, it means that you feel like you're about to walk to work defenseless, just waiting for the next argument. And it really isn't good to be living like that. So I would encourage you to think about it because it affects everyone in your life. It will affect the people you live with, it will affect your other colleagues, it will affect your ability to learn. And we're all faced with it. None of us have an environment where we can say that we are perfectly happy with those who are around us or those we live with. But we just make the best of it and we try our best to carry on. And I think that's really, really important. If you are thinking about taking up English or to improving your English, as I mentioned earlier, the answer you're looking for will always lie in what you personally believe. If you personally believe that words can be absorbed very, very quickly, then they will be. If you have a feeling that grammar is hard and you have to punish yourself with it, then you will. And I would invite you today really to make some kind of inventory or analysis of what you actually believe you can do. That might go quite deep because that might stem from uh, either a religious belief, a spiritual idea, an idea that someone else has given you, perhaps. And so these are things which all have to be looked at before you can really come to the table of learning. Learning a language, of course, is never easy for anyone. So it's something for you really to consider. Right. Well, I suppose we better wind this up because there's many people passing through. I think we've had about 10, 12 people coming in for a second and then going. So there's no point in keeping this going. You all can see the live recording, but it's lovely to be here with you all today. I wish you all a super day ahead. Just a final shout out. It's Chinese New Year coming very soon. According to my moon calendar, uh, there's only 2% of the moon left. Then it goes dark for a day, of course, and then the new moon begins to come. So this is a great time if you're living in Asia. The Spring Festival, I think they call it, the New Year celebrations. So I'm really happy for you if you're celebrating those, and I hope you get many red letters. And that's it from me for today. Just a quick recap about those words from our weekly lesson. Lyricists, folk music are two words well worth looking out for in your daily life. They're fairly common. Folk music is a genre, lyricist as the man who writes the lyrics for the songs, or in this case, the poems. We went through a couple of news headlines there as well, and we had a little chat about motivation, which was most interesting. And I really hope you enjoy this on the catch up. I'll be back again soon. I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.